listeners, welcome to the Lone Screenplay Nominee Podcast, where we talk about films that were solely nominated for an Oscar in the writing categories. I'm your host, Matthew Anderson, and today we have back on the show, fairly quickly, I must say, Ronaldo Sosa. Welcome back to the podcast, Ronaldo. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me again. I just wanted to ask, am I the first repeat guest?
No, I think you are now, I want to say like my third guest. Because I had Miles Hugh back on for the Glass Onion episode, and then I had an impromptu recording with Celia for About a Boy for the last episode. So I think you might be the third, but yeah, you're definitely not
That's early enough.
You're definitely in that. Yeah, you're definitely not in that double digit of recurring guests, but I'll try to get a new guest back on for another episode. It just so happens that again my recurring guest was unable to come on because of their schedule conflicts, but hopefully we'll have him back on the show down the road. So anyways, yeah. I think
I'm always the backup plan.
Yeah. Well, I figured, with this case, I'm like, okay. Yeah, because I was going to ask you to come back on, like, whenever the episode we were going to do for About a Boy, but I'm like, yeah, you know what, there's someone else I have in mind for a backup episode. And this one, I'm like, you know what, I already own the movie, so I'll throw this on as, like, my backup if Ronaldo's interested in doing it, so, welcome back to the show. Like I said, it's great to have you back on, before we get into our discussion like we usually do for these episodes, and with Ronaldo being a recurring guest, I always ask a recurring guest a different question that isn't a same old crap that the same old questions that I ask, where it's like, oh, what is it you do for a living, who are you, what are some of your favorite films, I guess we can do favorite films, but this one's gonna be a little bit different. What are, in your opinion, Ronaldo, since you've seen more international films, clearly more than I have, and even more films than I have ever, so I wanted to ask, what are some of your favorite non-English language films? And there's no limit for this whatsoever, so you can name, 20 or 100 of them if you want.
Well, that is very easy, I would say, because I have many, like a lot of my favorite films, period, are what you would consider foreign films. But for example, the one we're talking about today, that's one of my favorite movies ever. My favorite movie of all time would probably be, one of them would be All About My Mother. I love Almodovar. He's my favorite director.
Nice.
And one of his movies was nominated this year, so that's great that I get to talk about him somewhat. Another one of my favorite filmmakers is Bergman, so a lot of his movies would qualify, but my favorite is Fanny and Alexander, especially it's not a movie, but the miniseries version of it is one of the greatest things I've ever seen, and the movie version is great too. And I love a French short from like the 50s. I think it's called Song of Love. That's amazing too, and I don't think I want people to watch it, so that's why I mention it. It's like about two guys stuck in that are in a prison, separated by a wall, and they like basically are really horny for each other.
Oh, okay.
And start smoking through a wall. So yeah, there's a lot of great world cinema.
Nice. Oh yeah, there definitely is, and I would argue that especially nowadays, there's a lot more interesting films going on outside of the U.S. borders than there are in the U.S. But well, what do you expect? That's what happens when you go past the 1-inch barrier, so to speak. Yeah. As far as like some of my favorite non-English language films, obviously, Old Boy. I want to give a big old shout out to. I believe it's Park Chan-wook for Old Boy, the original. If you have not seen that, you must watch it. Do not watch the shitty-ass 2013 version with Josh Brolin. Parasite's another one. That's a really great one that I think most of my colleagues and family members have seen, or at least have heard of it. And then I remembered one film that I think I even mentioned to you and Sam and Zeta in the past when we did our Zoom calls together. I was surprised how much I enjoyed From Cleo 5 to 7. I did not expect
Cleo
to
from
like
5
it.
to 7.
Cleo from 5 to 7. There you go. Okay, sorry. I already fucked up the title. So Cleo from 5 to 7. I really enjoyed that movie. I don't know what
One
about
of the
it
best
was.
ever made.
Oh yeah, it's really good, and I gotta say I should rewatch it down the road because I saw it so long ago in film class, but I was really taken aback to how like that's a movie for me where I'm like, okay, I think the rule needs to be set in where it's like, for the most part, you should wait until the film ends and see how you feel about the film, because that was one where it's like 10-15 minutes in the film I thought, I'm not really gonna enjoy this is too slow for my taste, I'm starting to lose interest in it. But there was somewhere in the movie that it just grabbed a hold of me and just never let go. And once I got to the end, I'm like, wow, that was a really good movie. And Agnes Varda was an amazing director, and and she's had a wonderful career that I would like to explore more of down the road.
So I love that entire movie, but there's like a specific point where it went from like, oh, I really love this to like, this is one of the best things I've ever seen. And it's like the scene where Michel Legrand goes, like he's actually in the movie, and he goes and he starts playing the piano, and then she sings that song, Sans Toi, and it's
Yep.
like one shot and it just like closes in on her, and then like everything after that is incredible. I love
Yeah.
that movie. And also, I can't believe that I didn't mention any Asian movies, so I want to mention Woman in the Dunes, which is one of my favorite movies as well. And one of the best things that the Oscars ever did was nominate Hiroshi Teshigahara for best director for that movie. And if it wasn't
Nice.
for that, maybe like I probably would have heard of it because it's like a famous one. But that's the reason I watched it. And for once, they did something good.
Yeah. It's one of the few times where it's like, wow, the Academy actually did make a bullshit move, like they have in most years. Yeah, Bergman's also another one that you brought up that I definitely want to see more of, because I've seen Shame, which I actually thought was pretty good for what it was, and I really liked the Seventh Seal, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. So yeah, I've been meaning to get around to more Ingmar Bergman, but unfortunately, work has caught me in a bind, and I don't really have much time on free time because I'm doing podcast stuff, or just trying to get caught up on movies that I'm interested in for the Oscars. I see that the Ingmar Bergman collection. I showed that to Juan Carlos Ollana on his podcast, and he was stunned I got it. But yeah, anyways, yeah, I'm so happy that you got that collection. By the way, that's awesome. So, anyways, all right, yeah.
Yeah, and
So
I
I think
also like I'm
oh,
watching it chronologically in like the order of the booklet that's here, and I watched like the first 10, maybe something like that.
nice.
So I will continue that eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I might be able to. Yeah, I think Ingmar Bergman had like a lone screenplay nominee. He did Wild Strawberries that I'll cover down the road, which I'm very much looking forward to. There's a certain guest that I want to try to bring on, but I'm not sure if they're going to be able to do it. But we'll see what happens if I can get in contact with them. So we'll see. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I think that's a good segue into our discussion to talk about your choice that Ronaldo picked, Tu Mamá También. This won't be a beat-by-beat bulletin presentation like you hear on other channels, but we will be discussing major spoilers for our talk. If you haven't seen the film yet, please do so. If you're, if you would like to, without getting spoiled, watch the movie. But also, I do recommend that you do watch the movie because I did think it was damn good, especially for an Alfonso Cuarón movie for sure. And yeah, so just watch the film first and then come back to hear us talk about it. Also, I should give a fair disclosure that I don't know how much Ronaldo is going to want to talk in detail about the film, but the film is technically unrated, so there is a lot of sex and drugs in the film. If anyone, doesn't want to, if they're like, oh yeah, let's watch it with the whole family, and then they're about like literally 10 seconds of the movie like, I don't know if this was a good idea to watch with the whole family, because there are some people out there that just feel
I didn't watch it with my
uncomfortable
whole
doing it.
family, But I did watch it with two of my cousins, like my cousin and an aunt. But she's not like an old aunt; she's like 30. But yeah, I watched it
Okay.
with family.
Yeah. So see, yeah. So if you're okay with that, then sure. But if you're not, then yeah, I'd probably watch it by yourself. But yeah. So anyways, yeah. So so before we get into our discussion, I'll just try to breeze through as much of this production notes because there were a lot more production detail notes that I found and I just did not have time to compile into this abridged production history for it. So after Alfonso Cuarón worked on A Little Princess and Great Expectations, he wanted his next film to be one that didn't rely on production techniques that were being used in Hollywood cinema, including his own films he had done for A Little Princess and Great Expectations, which were dollies, close-ups, and dissolves. And he instead wanted to rely heavily on a documentary realist style of filmmaking and wanted to make the film he would have made before he went to film school. And Alfonso even cited a duo Philippine. I think I butchered that name. It's I think a French new wave film that he wanted to do or paid tribute to. And so that was like a crucial inspiration for Tu Mamá También. And he
For
wanted
one particular shot in the movie, actually.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen that movie, so we'll get into our discussion. I'm curious to know what it is. Yeah, we'll save it for our discussion. Just a moment. And then so he wanted to showcase Mexico's geography, politics, and people, along with the cultural within a reimagined road movie that was popular for American audiences at the time. Because I remember too, there was that was also kind of like a thing where it's like there were a fair amount of like road trip movies going on in in the late 90s, early 2000s filmmaking, or at least were shown in American audiences, so to speak. So as far as the script itself, it was written by both Alfonso and his brother Carlos Cuarón, and was written with this minimal and unelaborate manner to it, so the actors can contribute to its development during the rehearsal process. And instead of using these, fancy, heavy, fancy, overpriced cameras, they ended up using a handheld camera to create a documentary realist look that mimicked candid footage. And Tu Mamá También was produced by Hilo Producciones. Sorry if I butchered that name, but it's a company that was co-founded by Cuarón and George Vergara, a well-known Mexican businessman and the film's producer on the film. And the company provided sufficient funding to make the film and launch an impressive marketing campaign in which the budget for the film was $5 million and was substantial by Mexican film standards. Advertisement and publicity appeared across Mexico, along with the help of Hilo Producciones. The ratings board controversy gave the film a lot of free publicity in Mexico. We'll get to that in a minute in terms of what happened there. So the film ended up getting screened at I think it was Brazil and Mexico and a couple other places, but it did screen at the Venice Film Festival in 2001, where it won the Screenplay Prize, and it also screened at the Toronto International Film Festival and New York Film Fest that same year. And while 20th Century Fox would handle the distribution in Mexico, IFC Films handled the U.S. distribution and planned on releasing it in mid-2002. I still find it funny that technically in Mexico, this film is now owned by Disney. So that is pretty funny that a company like Disney, who are, pretty much prunes, and they're like, we can condone the violence and the language, but we don't want nudity, in our Deadpool film. So anyways, I find that a little funny. And then so the film was screened in the United States, but without an official MPAA rating, as it was unable to be marketed as an NC-17 film. And some of the controversy that came out of Mexico in terms of its rating boards was that Alfonso and Carlos Cuarón sued the Mexican Directorate of Radio, Television, and Cinema, RTC, for the film's 18-plus rating, a grade C certified from the RTC, which they considered illegal political censorship, and they took legal action to expose the government-controlled ratings board, prompting its transformation into an anonymous organization free of government involvement and political influence. And I'm looking through what because there was a quote that Alfonso Cuarón had said in regarding to so they claimed the ratings boards were operating illegally by denying parents the right to choose who can watch the film, violating fundamental legal rights in Mexico. So that whole controversy stirred up this whole I guess I gotta go see Tu Mamá También. So what's in this film that made it the 18 plus rating in Mexico. So so there was that. And outside of its lone original screenplay nomination, the film was nominated at the BAFTAs for Best Film Not in the English Language and Original Screenplay. It also got a Best Foreign Language Film nomination at Golden Globes. However, it did win at the Critics' Choice Awards and the Spirit Awards for Best Foreign Film, despite not being selected by its country, Mexico, to be represented at the Academy Awards for International Film. There was another film there. I'll get into a second of what it was right after I finish this. And since the film's release, Alfonso Cuarón has gone on to get multiple Academy Award nominations and ended up winning 4 competitive Academy Awards, 2 of which were from Gravity and 2 of which were from Roma. He did also accept the International Film Language Award on behalf of Mexico, and I'm pretty sure Roma ended up being the last film to win in the category that used to be titled Best Foreign Language Film. Now it's just Best International Film. So that's a fun little, bonus fact for you. And as we're talking right now, he's currently having a mini series of his distributed that's going to be distributed on Apple TV later in October, which was a psychological thriller called Disclaimer that had screened at the 81st Venice Film Festival and will also be screened at the 49th Toronto International Film Festival this year. As far as what the logline is of the film, it's essentially in Mexico, two teenage boys and an older woman embark on a road trip and learn a thing or two about life and each other. So, like I said with Celia last week, I have various questions I want to ask Ronaldo in regarding to why you chose this. Although I could sense, based on your past crush for a couple of these actors, I could see why you wanted to talk about them in this film. But other than that, what was the main reason why this film spoke to you? Because you also mentioned before it was one of your favorite films you had ever seen, or even like the best thing Alfonso Cuarón had ever directed, if I'm correct in saying.
Yes, that is correct. And one of the main reasons is for anyone that doesn't know, Spanish is my native language, so I speak Spanish. I'm not Mexican, but I speak Spanish. And this is one of the few Spanish language movies that would be eligible for this podcast, if not the only. I'm not sure exactly. But there's that. There's also that it's a really great movie. I think that it's a really great exploration of human sexuality in a way, and also I find it really interesting the way that it uses such a not really, because there's not really a plot to this movie, but the way that it uses its story to give context to the political climate of Mexico at the time. And it's just a really great movie. There's a lot to talk about. I love the actors. Maribel Verdú is amazing, and yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah, so this was my first watch. I had gotten a copy of this a long time ago. In fact, this wasn't even on my radar to watch immediately until you had recommended it for the podcast. I'm like, all right, I know I have the Blu-ray somewhere around the house, either in my bedroom or it's in the entertainment room, so I have it somewhere. And yeah, it's a really good movie. Again, I agree with you. It doesn't have well, obviously I agree with you because it's a fact. Yeah, this film doesn't have much of a plot. But what it does offer is something that I think Alfonso Cuarón, and it's it's something that he's always really good at least from the films that I've seen so far, is that he's able to get really strong performances out of his actors, and he's able to come up with a really good script. Like, sure, like, Roma was another one that he made, that he wrote and directed, in which his script was actually pretty good for what it was. And, if nothing else, this did remind me at times of Roma, except Roma was a bit more polished than Tu Mamá También is in terms of how it's directing its sequences and such. But I actually like that it has a bit more of a rougher edge to it. It's obviously, it's technically, unrated here in the United States, or at least the cut that I watched was. And whereas Roma, it had a bit more restrictions to it. Well, obviously, because it's telling a different story, but also it's rated R as well. But yeah, no, Alfonso Cuarón just did a really good job with directing the movie. And yeah, all the actors are good in it, especially, how do you pronounce her name? Maribel Verdú?
Maribel Verdú.
Yeah. Yeah, she was great. I really thought she was fantastic, and I'd forgotten that I'd seen her in Pan's Labyrinth. She was in, and she was also pretty good there. But yeah, no, she's great here, and I'm curious to see why she wasn't able, or why Hollywood, or even just, or maybe it's just because I just haven't seen the movies that she's been in, but it really did, open up the world for me in terms of like, oh wow, she actually is really good, and I really wonder if she's done anything else that was this complex in terms of her performance, especially when you find out by the end of the film, we already mentioned spoilers, so screw it, that she had cancer the whole time, and that's why she went to the doctors to find out, what was wrong with her, and she found out that she had cancer in her system, and that she was slowly dying. And that's something that I thought was just really interesting, like an interesting note to bring up as to why she became the person that she was throughout the film. Just to enjoy the pleasures of life as her life was fading away slowly, while also teaching the boys, a thing about life in their own way. And yeah, she was fantastic, and yeah, we'll talk about the two boys in just a moment. But yeah, was there anything else to you that stood out in terms of the film overall? Because I got a fair amount of notes I can go through.
To address some of the points that you made, so about the script itself, Alfonso Cuarón is not one of the people, like there are a lot of writer directors, and like most of them you can classify them as, like, for example, um you think of someone like Alfonso Cuarón as more of a director than a writer. You think of Tarantino as more of a writer than a director. Like there are people that you classify like that, and Cuarón is more of a director. And this is probably like the only movie where I would say that he made like a truly incredible screenplay, because like the way, and I don't know if you can appreciate it the same by reading the subtitles, but that the way that the dialogue feels so real, and
Mm-hmm.
like it's just two guys talking, like all of the slang, like I didn't know a lot of what those meant, but it feels really natural, like just two people talking. All of the conversations, like the way that they're talking over each other, and like it feels improvised in the way that it's talked about. But I was like watching the interviews and things, and apparently it was all like really scripted, like down to the the hand gestures and like the movements. Everything was like really, all of it was planned beforehand, and it's really impressive in a way that I don't think any of his other movies are on that level. And
Yeah.
as for Maribel Verdú and like the way that she uh highlights like about her dying, I obviously think seen this many times before, so I already knew that going into it. And you can see like in the first scene when she's in her room, and not her first scene, but in the scene at the near the beginning of the movie where she's in her room and her husband is calling her to tell her that he's cheating on her, and she starts crying, and you think that she's crying because of that, but she's not really, because if you look closely in on top of the, like she had just gotten the news that she was dying, and
Yeah.
she didn't really care about him cheating on her, because you can tell that they don't really like the relationship is not going well anymore, and she already knew about the cheating anyway,
Yeah.
and so she's crying about not being about dying basically, and you can see like in a way like if you didn't know that you would be like thinking why is she hanging around with these two teenagers and you can tell like in just the very first scene that she's in and the way that she interacts with her husband and what we learn about her from the narration that she's like a very she's not a very confident person, especially when she's like with other people. She's not very sophisticated, you could say, and she feels very insecure being around the kind of people that her husband hangs out with. And you can tell that being with these two teenagers that don't really know anything, it like makes her feel superior to them and like she knows that she is smarter than them and that makes her feel comfortable around them, and I think that's the main reason why she decides to go with them, because she knows that she has the upper hand with them, and she knows what she's going to get. And I think that that sense of control that she has with them is probably the driving force behind the entire movie.
Yeah, and it's something that she doesn't have that kind of control with her, ex-boyfriend, or not boyfriend, husband, I should say. Because he's out gallivanting and having all these affairs, and there's nothing that she could do about it. She knows about the affairs, but there's not much that she could do about it. In order to be like, she can't reprimand him because all he's gonna do is just do the same shit over and over again, and he'll never learn his lesson. But yeah, I got to say it was really bizarre seeing the movie and seeing Diego Luna and Gael Garcia Bernal in the movie as like what they were in like their 20s or almost 30, I would say maybe. And it was really weird to see them in their roles. Yeah, it was really weird to see them in their roles.
Early 20s at the most.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was bizarre to see them in their roles and be that young and have such like baby faces to them. Or like nowadays, whenever I think of Diego Luna or Gael Garcia Bernal, I always think of them like kind of have a bit of a stubble to them. I think Gael Garcia Bernal wears glasses and such, but I always think of him as like a much older person. But yeah, but they're both pretty good in the film. Like, and I had found out too as I was writing notes for the production details that Cuarón didn't want to cast Diego Luna for the role of Tenoch because he was a teen idol and a telenovela star in Mexico, and Gael convinced Cuarón to hire him because their friendship would make the performance of their character's friendship much easier, and so he hired him because he became convinced that their bond would produce a natural and honest performance. And it worked out pretty well because you bought these guys as best friends, and and even through their rage that they have with each other, where it's they find out like, oh yeah, you slept with my girl and I slept with yours, and they both start acting like babies essentially, to even where what's her name, Luisa would just walk out and be like, I'm not gonna treat you guys. I'm not gonna. I'm tired of treating you guys like babies or whatever. And there was that line she gave about not wanting to. She ends up having to be the mother that changed diapers, and she doesn't want to be in that role. And I thought that was like, yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it's a kind of fits the description for.
That they basically just want to fuck each other.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of fit that role of like, okay, we kind of figure the dynamic between her and with the two of them there. And it was funny because the movie for me, up until, it's kind of like with Cleo from 5 to 7, up until a certain point, I was like, yeah, it's a good movie. I like it overall. But it wasn't until Lusa, the Mariabel character, ended up having sex with Diego Luna's character, that in terms of like the dynamic, and then Gael Garcia Bernal finds out about this, and they end up having that swim in the the disgusting pool. I don't know why you would want to swim in that period with like all these leaves and like it hasn't even been filtered out and all this stuff, and it was like, oh god. And they have that conversation with the two boys about, one of them tells the other like, yeah, I slept with your girl a while back or whatever, and he reveals that. And the narration, which has been throughout the film constantly in regards to setting up who these characters were and their relationship and establishing the politics and culture of Mexico, he establishes, you know, what the boys are feeling. Like, he hasn't felt this kind of like, not sadness, but like almost not kind of rage that they have with like, and then they describe like when was the last time they had this kind of feeling that they're feeling within the moment. And the narration actually worked really well and enhanced the film because it allowed us to get a bit more, at least for me, it got a bit more of a bit of depth to these characters. And it wasn't just, you know, it didn't make it just be like another plotless, you know, characters are just driving around and having fun and there's not really much going on. But with this one, it's like, oh wow, there's actually a bit of you know, intrigue and depth to these characters and make the dynamic more interesting when situations like that do happen. You know, how is this character going to react, like, you know, and give us a bit of insight to what they're feeling, so to speak. And it's not, and I'm not asking these kind of films to spell it out for us, so to speak, but I do ask that there is a bit more to it outside of just a pretty good performance. And obviously, really good performances can save a movie. It just depends on what it is. But there was more to it, to this script, that I like you had said earlier, it really did feel like Cuarón really made a solid script, and one that felt like he had a lot of depth to it, which is something that I'll probably notice on, you know, subsequent rewatches down the road for sure.
And something else about the narration is that it's not really about the characters. Like, the narration gives you a bit of distance from the movie because it's so like cold and like not really emotional at all. And like sometimes it's just saying this random facts about like that time that they're driving down the road, and he just says like, oh, if they've been here 10 years earlier, they would have seen like a box of like bloody chickens screaming out, and then two bodies laid out on the floor with a blanket over them and a woman crying over them. And it's like
Yeah.
something that doesn't really have to do anything with the movie. And as I said at the beginning, this is a really political movie, but like all of the political stuff is in the background. Like,
Yeah.
it's basically tangential to what's happening with the characters. It doesn't really matter at all. And like you can see the state and um like the state of Mexico at the time, and what was happening, and like also class plays a big part in this movie because we didn't mention it, but Tenoch is like from a wealthy family and
Hmm.
Julio is not. And there's like that line early in the movie from the narrator where they were talking about each other, and the narrator was saying like, oh, what they're saying is true, like they have a very deep bond, but they didn't mention that every time that Tenoch goes to Julio's house, he has to lift up the toilet seat with his feet, and he doesn't tell him about that. And then every time that Julio goes to Tenoch's house in the bathroom, he burns incense to like hide the smell. And it's like small things like that that play into the dynamic and show how like the different classes and their different backgrounds affect the way that they relate to each other and the way that they interact. And that's also a thing about like Maribel Verdú's character's marriage, because she's from a very lower class background, and the way that her husband treats her is probably related to that. Because he probably feels like she should be grateful to him for like him getting her out of the situation that she was in. And as I said, it's a very political movie, but it doesn't really feel that way, maybe on a first watch or if you're not really paying attention. And
Yeah.
that's again thanks to the script and the narration, which is, I don't know if you knew this, but the narrator is I forget his name, but Jimenez Cacho, the guy in the lead in Bardo.
Oh, okay. That explained why his voice sounded familiar. I'm like, what? I was like, because I watched some of Bardo. I didn't get a chance to finish it. I will down the road because I do really like Alejandro Inarritu's films, at least from what I have seen. I was like, why does his voice sound so familiar? I'm like, I'll probably, because I was like, I better pay attention to the movie because it'll, this voice will distract me throughout the film. But yeah, okay, that's nice. Yeah, Daniel.
Daniel Jimenez Cacho.
Yep, yeah, Cacho. There you go. Yeah. And he was also in Kronos, which was directed by Guillermo del Toro. And in case anyone isn't aware, Alfonso, Alejandro, and Guillermo are all like tight buddies. They call themselves the, or at least someone coined it as
Los Tres Amigos.
Oh God, yep, the three amigos. Yeah, three amigos. Yeah, and yeah, no, it was. I must say, yeah, no, this was a really good choice. You picked Ronaldo, and there were a lot of things about the film that I personally liked on a technical level. I thought all the long takes in the film, like having this documentary like approach to the whole film, not doing a whole lot of coverage or doing like close-ups and reaction shots, cutaways or whatever. It really helped enhance the movie and got me much more invested in it. And it made me, if nothing else, it made me be like, oh wow, like they really, if anything else, they relied heavily on this being a really good script and great performances. Because like I said, the budget was like only $5 million. So they probably didn't have enough to do anything fancy with the camera work, and that's fine. But it really enhanced the experience for the film, for me at least, and was a really cool slice of life for sure. And even a film back then in like 20 years, released 20 plus years ago, it's like, yeah, Alfonso Cuarón made this, because I'm pretty sure he made this after he had done. It was like right after Great Expectations. He was at a point in his career where he was like, I'm just being a director for hire, and I'm losing that creative edge I used to have years ago when he started. And then this came along with Carlos Cuarón, co-writing the script. And as I said earlier, it's the one that put him on the map with that creative juice flowing of like, okay, now I'm gonna get the now I forgot I'm also a writer as well. And even though his other films he's done, like the scripts aren't great, like Gravity isn't really that great of a script. But he, as you said before, Ronaldo, and you said it perfectly too, like he is known as a director first, writer second. And there's a reason why, because he can create a good enough script that works enough to get actors on board, but he is a really solid director, and he's a great storyteller too. I mean, hell, there's a reason why he's one of the few directors, or one of the handful of directors who've won twice in the Best Director category down the road. And he's just a really talented filmmaker. Even, the fact that he was able to do Prisoner of Azkaban, and that's, considered by many to be one of their favorites, if not their favorite Harry Potter film of the franchise. And it's because Cuarón gave it something that the franchise needed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in terms of directing, I agree with you. I haven't rewatched those movies in years, so I'll have to see how it is on a rewatch. But yeah, and I'm looking through other notes. And in terms of like directing, some of the scenes I really enjoyed the most, the beach scenes I thought were stunning. Like, not just the photography was great, but I loved just everything about it. Like, just them hanging out, even if it was just like, a slice of life and there's not much going on. There was just something about it that I'm like, yeah, I could really get into this. And it almost made me feel like in those moments in particular that I felt like I was in the film with these characters, so to speak. And that's really impressive for Alfonso Cuarón to do that kind of feeling, to create that kind of feeling for me that I'm there with these characters. And I just loved how those beach scenes were done and were crafted. And yeah, it was really good. One of my other favorite edits in terms of what he does with the movie is when the boys are at the abandoned pool, and there's no one there, and they end up they're by themselves, and you see the shot of the shadow hovering over the pool, and they're like unos, dos, tres, and they jump into the pool and do this like big elaborate swim of like who could swim the farthest without having to reach the surface, and then they do it again, although they're nude this time, and and it was like and I thought those scenes were actually pretty cool. Like in terms of how they
When you started
crafted
talking
them.
about that, I thought you were gonna mention the scene where they're jerking off.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know. That's why I'm
Talking
like,
about
oh,
girls.
wait. Yeah, that's why I'm like, wait, hold on. Let me make sure I specify which pool scene because there's at least like 3 of them in the movie. Yeah. The film uses a lot of water too, especially with them, taking showers and then the beach and then swimming in the pool. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you could say that it's a theme in the movie because the
Yep.
Maribel Verdú's last line in the movie, like I don't know exactly how to translate it to English, but it's like la vida es como la espuma, así que dense como el mar. So like life is like foam, so you have to be like the sea. Like it doesn't really make sense in English, but it's like you have to be like water, like you have to like go with things flow like the water basically. And I think that that's a really big thing in the movie because like, something we haven't mentioned is that they there are a lot of movies that claim to be about love triangles or thruples, but a movie is
Mm.
not a real thruple unless all of the points touch and they
Yeah.
kiss at the end. And like throughout the entire thing you feel the tension, like when they tell each other that they slept with each other's girlfriends. Like you can tell later on in the movie that they don't really care about that. It's more like about themselves and like the way that they interact with Maribel Verdú. Like you can tell that they don't really know how to have sex with women. Like they're very inexperienced around women. They don't really know anything about women, and you like feel this tension between them. And like there that happens in a lot of movies, and it never goes anywhere. But then it all builds up to that scene near the end when they like the pigs go through their camp so they can stay there that night, and they go to the they get to stay in a room and they like spend the whole night drinking and they make up and they are dancing together. Like there's the scene that was inspired by Adieu. I forgot the name of the movie, but that scene was
Uh.
when she goes to the machine that plays the music, and then she looks back and looks like directly at the camera and starts dancing towards us, and that's like a recreation of a scene from that movie.
Hmm.
And yeah, so they start dancing together, and then they go to the room, and she starts giving them oral sex, and then they kiss each other, and that's like maybe um the most earnest moment in the movie. Like it's a very delicate kiss, and it's like
Yeah.
really heartbreaking at the end when you learn that after that they really fall out of touch and they only meet once again after, and then they never see each other again. And
Yeah.
it could be like a metaphor for bisexuality and how a lot of people like repress themselves. Like that probably like the reason why they started seeing each other because it they didn't feel comfortable like learning that part of themselves also made them feel uncomfortable and they didn't want to keep feeling that. And so yeah, that's another part that I really like about the movie, the how it explores queerness in a very in seemingly straight people.
Yeah, it was really interesting too, and that it was like it was kind of a subtle build up. Like I kind of figured a little bit of that, like especially when she brought up the line of like when the
Should just fuck each
the
other.
older woman. Yeah, you two just want to fuck each other. Yeah, it's like that line. I was like, yeah, that feels like, yeah, they're probably gonna go down that route. And I never, like I said, this was my first watch, so I wasn't really aware that was gonna happen until I was like, okay, yeah, it makes sense, and it did feel like a genuine build up to that moment for sure, especially with the tension that they have for each other throughout. Um, and yeah, no, but I really I like I said before, Ronaldo, and I'll say it again, you picked a really good one for this movie for the podcast because like I said, there was
I
a
have good
point.
taste.
Yeah, no, you do. Yeah, but yeah, yeah. It's there are some films that I know that there are most films that I watch that you're not enjoying, and that's fine. But I know when it comes to you recommending a movie for me, I'm like, yeah, it's probably 50-50. I'll enjoy it, or at barest minimum, I'll be like, all right, I respected the film, and appreciated some things about it. Like we talked about with May December. Like I wasn't the biggest fan of the film, but I could see why you would enjoy something like that. Or why people would enjoy a movie like May December. But with this one here, no, I totally understand, and I totally get the hype behind Tu Mamá También. I thought it was a really solid movie, and again, great performances from everyone, and a really good script, because without those two elements of the film, especially that script, there's no way the film would have worked nearly as well as it did. And yeah, I was surprised. So yeah, yeah. Any other final thoughts on the movie itself before we go to the awards section of the show?
Yes. So the title, which I really like that in the US they kept the original title. And for anyone that doesn't know, Y tu mamá también means and your mother too in Spanish. And it's basically like named after a joke that happens in that scene later in the movie, like after they made up and they
That's
tell each other
right.
that they didn't just sleep with their girlfriends once and that they also gave them blowjobs. And then Gael Garcia Bernal, like joking, says like, "Oh, and I fucked your mother too."
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a funny scene, and I like the title. It probably like I don't think that it would have grabbed as much attention if they named it "And Your Mother Too" in English. That sounds
Yeah.
really weird.
Yeah. Y tu mamá también. It's a much better title, and I'm glad that they kept it as the Spanish, term for it. Yeah, but yeah, no, yeah, really, really solid film. Again, I would definitely recommend it, and I got to see more of Alfonso Cuarón's films, because I'm trying to think what else there was from his filmography I haven't seen.
He is
So
Yeah, he's at his best when he's working in his native language, and I wish he did it more often. Like after this movie, he didn't work in Spanish again until Roma. But
yeah,
he doesn't make that many movies, so it's not really that much. It's only like Children of Men and Gravity in between the two. But
and
still,
Prisoner of Azkaban
he
he did.
should make more movies in Spanish. Oh yeah, yeah, that too.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
I really like all three of those, but he should work in Spanish more often. He should give Mexican actors more opportunities because like they get attention when it's him.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, look at Roma. It got Yalitza Aparicio and Marina de Tavira Oscar nominations, and I didn't even know who the fuck they were until they did Roma. Like, I don't think anyone knew.
Yalitza Aparicio
Yeah.
never even made a movie. She'd never acted. She'd never done anything. So
Yeah.
her cousin was the one who was supposed to audition, and she got sick that day. So then, like, Yalitza went in her place, and
Yeah.
now she's an Oscar nominee. Like, that's how things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, every once in a while, I think back to her reaction, and it's so beautiful that like to see her be in this position where it's like, she never even considered acting as like a profession or anything, and she always considered wanted to be like a school teacher, and and then yeah, that role came around, and she got the Oscar nomination deservedly too. And yeah, it was great. Yeah, I love that. But yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I would like to see more of Alfonso doing more films in his native language, because
Why hasn't he
he's
worked with Salma Hayek, who is mentioned in this movie?
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And she got nominated the same year this competed at the Oscars. Like, what the fuck, guys? Oh, yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, Salma Hayek has never worked on an Alfonso Cuarón movie. I don't think she's even worked with
She hasn't worked with any of them.
any of like Iñárritu or Del Toro. Okay,
No.
yeah, interesting. Okay, yeah. Well, anyways, yeah. So someone get on it. Get Salma Hayek a role for Alfonso Cuarón's next movie, whatever he's doing. So yeah, that's that. So yeah, going into our discussion for the awards, I think I know your answer to this question, but just just to confirm it, did you think this was worthy of its sole writing nomination, and would you have nominated for anything else at the Oscars?
It was definitely deserving, and it should have won.
Okay.
Even though I love the winner, and I'm glad he won. Uh,
Yeah.
but yes, it deserved that. It should have also won Best Picture. It's my favorite movie that year. and
Ooh.
it should have been nominated in director. And I would have nominated Maribel Verdú. She's better than most of the nominees that year. And
Yeah.
I would say that the two
Yes.
boys are also better than most of the nominees that year.
Yeah, yeah, I brought this up in the about a boy. Like, no one saw The Quiet American, and he only got in because, well, Michael Caine.
And he's good in that
Yeah,
movie. Better than he's not the worst there.
yeah. I did want to ask though, for director, if you would have put Tu Mamá También in, who would you have taken out for director?
I would take out any of them for him, but
Okay,
just
but anyone in
thinking about
specifically?
it, take out Polanski.
Oh wow, okay.
Also, take
All
out
right.
The Hours. I really like that movie, but I don't like it because of the directing. I like the actresses, I like the script.
Yeah, I wasn't really the biggest fan of the hours. The hours. I get why Stephen Daldry got in, because of the whole Harvey Weinstein producing and stuff, but and it was like a big ensemble, and they like those kind of movies. But yeah, yeah, sure, I would take the hours
I
out
love
for
that
sure.
movie, but yeah, he didn't need to be there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, but it was nice that Pedro Almodovar got in for Talk to Her for a deserving director nod and a deserving original
Yeah,
screenplay win for sure.
and he should have
Um,
won of the
yeah,
nominees.
yeah, yeah. You wouldn't have given Todd Haynes the Oscar for Far From Heaven.
I would not. He should have been nominated. Like I have you probably know I've told you, but I have like a document where I keep my Oscar lineups for every year in every single category, going by Oscar rules. So like I look at things that were eligible in each year, and in that year, I'm looking it up now. I'm going to see who my five were. It was so I actually only have four so far, and it would be Todd
Okay.
Haynes for Far From Heaven. I have Hayao Miyazaki for Spirited Away. I have
Hmm.
Almodovar for Talk to Her, and I have Alfonso Cuarón for Y Tu Mamá También.
Okay. Nice. All right. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, and I should also mention, in case we forget, the film that was submitted and selected by the country Mexico was The Crime of Father Amaro. Have you seen that movie yet?
I have not, but was it that same year?
Uh, yeah. So, funny enough, Gael Garcia Bernal was also in that movie.
Yeah, he's also the
Um,
lead.
Yeah. When it was released, oh, interesting, caused a controversy on the part of the Roman Catholic groups in Mexico who tried to stop the film from being screened. They failed, and the film became the biggest box office draw ever in the country. Interesting. Grossed 27 million
No,
worldwide.
yeah, because I know that
Yeah.
that did get nominated, and I'm trying to look here. Because I thought that so Y Tu Mamá También came out in 2001 in Mexico,
Yes.
so that's when it would have been eligible. So the movie that they submitted instead was Amores Perros, maybe?
Amoros Pelos
Yeah, because
was
the Crime of the Father Amaro was the year after.
well. Okay, so Amoros Pelos came out in 2000, submitted for the 73rd Academy Awards. So Y Tu Mamá También, if it came out in 2001, it would have been submitted for the 74th
The
Oscars.
74th.
Yeah. So what was submitted that year? Violet Perfume, No One Is Listening. That's what they submitted for the 74th Oscars for
A
Mexico.
stupid choice, and it's also a political choice because even though again it's not very clear, like the submission of a movie by a country is a very political thing. That's why you get
Yeah.
things like Iran obviously never going to submit The City of a Secret Fake this year, which is why it was submitted by Germany instead.
Yeah.
So a lot of things like that happen, and that's why they were never going to submit this movie because like the entire controversy thing. And that was a stupid decision because it would have been probably I don't know if Izzy because I don't remember what else was that year, but it would have been an easy nomination at least.
Yeah. And hope, well, we'll see what happens with France this year because they got the Count of Monte Cristo or they're going to
Emilia
choose
Perez.
Emilia Perez. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm curious to see what the country's gonna do, but they're probably gonna fuck it up again, like they did with Anatomy of a Fall. Not that Anatomy of a
They
Fall was
didn't
ever
fuck
gonna
it
make
up.
it in to begin with.
They did not fuck it up. That
Yeah,
The Taste of Things is a better movie, and I will die on that hill.
yeah. I mean, granted, they were never going to submit Anatomy of a Fall because of the politics, but still, yeah. Anyways,
They did the right
yeah.
thing for a bad reason.
Yeah, they did the right thing for a bad reason. That's something I'll start using. Is they did the right reason for they did the right thing for a bad reason. Okay. Yeah, but other than that though, yeah, I agree with you on Maribel Verdú. Yeah, she would have been a far better deserving lead actress nominee that year than almost anyone of that lineup that I'd seen.
I would say anyone but Julianne.
Yeah, I haven't seen that film, so so the only two I'd seen that year were The Hours and Chicago.
They nominated the wrong person for The Hours. It should have been Meryl.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, honestly, I was more impressed with Meryl and adaptation than I was with The Hours.
She should have been a double nominee.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. And yeah, The Boys. Yeah, there would have been pretty cool nominations. For sure. One thing I failed to, I actually didn't even realize until after we were done with the movie was I actually forgot Emmanuel Lubezki shot Tu Mamá También.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
He's done most of his movies.
I don't know why, but I was under the impression that he was working with a different cinematographer. Alfonso was. I thought he was working with like some other cinematographer, and Emmanuel and Chiva which is the nickname for Emmanuel Lubezki. I thought he was just too busy and just couldn't do it. And he was like, yeah, all right,
he was actually
I'll
the
give it my buddy.
reason. He was actually the reason why this movie got made at all. Partly because from what I saw, so Carlos and Alfonso came up with the idea for this movie before they even made their first movie, which was called Solo con tu pareja, which also has the same lead actor as Bardo.
Oh, okay, nice.
And so they made that first, but then he went to Hollywood and he made A Little Princess, and he made Great Expectations, and then he wanted to like go back to his roots, as you were saying, and then Chivo was like, oh, like shouldn't you make that movie that you were telling me about before? And then that's why they started making this, and
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, no, it's yeah. Yeah, God, can we yeah, maybe we should get another non-English language film from Alfonso Cuarón and Chiva comes back. Cuz yeah, what was even the last movie that Emmanuel Lubezki did?
It was probably one of the Terrence Malick things.
Let me see. Oh God, he did Amsterdam. Oh,
That thing.
Yeah. And then before that was Song to Song. And then he worked on more Terrence Malick films and Iñárritu films. Okay. Yeah. Come on.
He needs to work with other people.
Yeah, he needs to work with people that aren't David O. Russell. Okay. It's like don't ever do that, please. Just there's other better filmmakers out there who need your talent. Chivo, come on, you're better than that. Anyways, yeah. So women. That's. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah. Maybe him and Jane Campion could work on another movie together, or
him and Lucrecia Martel.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or yeah, you could do that. Yeah. So other than that, I don't really have much else in terms of Oscar push. I would have gone for. Really glad I got the Oscar nomination. Very deserving. And God, yeah, that would have been tough to be like, which one do I like more? Talk to Her or Tu Mamá También? But either one was still a good winner.
Both, like top. Yeah, they're both like top 5 of the year for me.
Yeah,
I love it. Talk to Her. That's one of my favorite Pedro movies. But there are also other movies by him that I like more. Like,
okay,
just a couple years later with Gael Garcia Bernal, he made Bad Education, and that's one of his best movies. And also, Gael Garcia Bernal's best performance. He should have won the Oscar that year. And
was that in 2004?
Yeah, so there are other. Yeah, 2004.
Oh,
He is
okay.
like 1,000 times better than everyone nominated that year. And yeah, so I I so yeah, I love Pedro, but there are other movies by him that I love more, and there are other years that I would give him the award. While I think that this is Alfonso Cuarón's greatest achievement, so that's why I go with him. And I also think that at least on just like a script level, it's more impressive than Talk to Her, because like that's more like not even about the dialogue, it's more about the concept of that movie is really interesting. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I did. I actually watched it for Sam's podcast years ago. I surprisingly enjoyed Talk to Her. I would like to revisit it down the road. But yeah, that was my first Pedro movie I'd seen. That and Parallel Mothers. And I have my issues with Pedro as a filmmaker, but for the most part, I actually think he's a really talented storyteller, and I would like to see more of his films. So, yeah.
He's the best.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say before we wrap up. Yeah, I just don't really have much else to say other than I would like to see more of Alfonso Cuarón's films, and yeah, and I better rewatch Roma again because it's been like it's been a long time since I've last seen it, and I would like to watch Roma, and I the last time I'd seen it, I really enjoyed it a lot. So.
The last thing that I will say about the movie is it was one of my letterbox reviews from one of the times that I watched this is once, and I don't remember if I've told you, but once like I was in a family gathering and my stepdad was talking about how he would never kiss a man because he was afraid he might like it, which is basically encapsulating the entire ending of this movie. Two guys kissed each other. They liked it. They got scared, and then they never talked to each other again because they are afraid of what society will think. And that's like there are a lot of bi people that don't live as what they are because of that same because they have the option to just not think of it, and they don't. And that is another reason why I like the movie because it explores that.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up about that. Yeah, so I don't really have too much else to say other than, like I said, Ronaldo, thank you for dedicating your time to be here on the show. Before we sign off, is there anything you would like to plug in or where listeners can follow you along after the episode is finished?
So I don't really do much. I'm on Twitter, which is our Santana 2024. And I haven't been very active recently, but the festivals are coming, and I will be campaigning for people I like. I will be campaigning for All We Imagine Is Light, even though I haven't seen it. I love women. I don't like the slander that I saw about Mariel Heller today.
Yeah,
But
that
yeah,
was unfortunate.
I'm there.
Yeah. We'll have an interesting discussion about Night Bitch after we record because I have some thoughts about that. But yeah, as for me, you could follow me and the show through Linktree under @Matthew995, where you can follow along on all my social media accounts such as Twitter and Letterboxd. On the same site, I provide a link where you can listen to more episodes of the show. And if you're interested in being in the hot seat like Ronaldo has, once again, let me know, and hopefully we can arrange that happening soon. In the meantime, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and we hope to see you at the movies. Take care, guys.